Michelle, and welcome back to the Canadian History, a Chronology channel. Today's episode, number 9, continues with First Contact. This video's focus will be on John Cabot. Before starting, I just want to mention that from the Vikings to John Cabot, we jump ahead by almost 500 years. It's not that no one came here in between, but very few, if any, came, and if they did, it was for fishing and whaling, not exploration or settlement. Another fact to mention is that in the context of the early explorers in Canadian history, not all the explorers of the Americas, but just Canada, there were what we call the 3 C's: John Cabot, Jacques Cartier, and Samuel de Champlain. The first C, John Cabot, is the subject of this video. Here in North America we call him John Cabot, but back home in Italy he was called Giovanni Caboto. Cabot basically rediscovered North America after the Vikings left and claimed the region for England. He was Italian and a contemporary of Christopher Columbus, and he too believed that the world was round. He too also believed, like Columbus, that by sailing west across the Atlantic, one would eventually reach Asia, specifically the Orient. For Cabot, these ideas were reinforced by the stories of Marco Polo, who wrote of the immense wealth he found in Asia: gold, silk, gems, and importantly, spices. Oddly enough, his voyage was approved, but not financed, by Henry VII, the King of England, not the rulers of Italy or Spain, his homelands. Cabot reasoned that by going west at the higher latitudes, the trip would be shorter, and England agreed. At this time, Spain had already claimed the middle latitudes and had no interest in funding further explorations. King Henry VII funded one ship, the Matthew, with a small crew of just 18 men. Cabot sailed for the New World in May of 1497, just 5 years after Columbus. Upon landing, he called the land Newfoundland. No one is 100% sure where Cabot landed, but it was most likely in Newfoundland or Cape Breton. Although not a fact, Cabot possibly sighted Beothuk or Innu peoples. Reports from the crew suggest that they only ventured a few hundred feet onto the land and saw what may have been 2 running figures or an animal. The crew did bring back an unstrung bow, a snare, and a needle for making nets. Cabot never did find a route to the Orient, but he did find fish, lots of fish. The seas off Newfoundland, the Grand Banks, were swarming with cod. There were so many cod that the sailors didn't even need fishing lines. They simply dropped their buckets in the water and hauled up buckets full of cod. By now, back in Europe, there was no longer any doubt that a new continent had been discovered. In 1498, Cabot set out on the second expedition, again in search of a way to reach the Orient. This time he was outfitted with 300 men and 5 ships. Unfortunately, there are no records of Cabot ever returning, so it has been assumed that he perished en route. And again, Cabot did not reach the Orient. Following Cabot's discovery, hundreds of ships would come to fish off the Grand Banks. They came from England, Spain, France, and Portugal. But they were all transitory. They came only for the fish and were not interested in establishing long-term settlements. And it wasn't until 1524, 26 years later, that France finally decided to send an official expedition to the area. But that's the subject for my next video. Well, that's it for the short history of John Cabot. Please stay tuned for more on First Contact with Episode 10, Jacques Cartier. And remember, at any time, feel free to leave comments or questions below, and I'll do my best to respond to them all. And please, be a true Canadian and and be polite. And if you like this content, please subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. And hit the bell if you'd like to be notified of any new content. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.